Hi, I'm fairy godmother to many children, many dear children, and but I have a story to tell the adults. I've written a story that was inspired by a movie I saw as a child, and I've never forgotten it. And I thought that I would look around and see if I could find the story. I found many versions to the same story, but I couldn't find the original movie. Uh, I didn't like any of the versions, so I wrote my own. So I hope you like it. So please like and subscribe, and I'll be creating many more videos for the children in your family, or you can enjoy them too. Appreciate it. So please like and subscribe. Right? The Sister That Saved Six Brothers, and this is part one. I'll be writing part two soon. I already have a couple of versions out there for the children, which you can find on my site. Once upon a time, a king was left with six sons and only one daughter when his queen died. His depression went on for more than a year. His hurt hunting buddies finally talked him into a hunting trip. He was an awesome horseman and rode far ahead of his companions. Soon he was lost deep in the woods. With no clear way out, he knew that any direction he might decide to go could have been the opposite way from which his castle was. He began to see that he might end up spending the night with the wild animals in the forest. Owls were hooting, and a bat swooped in low toward him, checking him out. It was sundown, and after much searching, his hunting buddies finally gave up and went home with no game to prepare for meat. In the morning, they said, they would search for him again. They feared the worst may have already happened to him because they couldn't find any trace of him, no hoof prints on the forest floor. Coming down a pathway, glowing as the setting sun streamed through red and yellow and orange leaf trees, was an old woman carrying a bucket of coals. It was autumn, and she needed the coals to start up her fire should it go out in the middle of the night. Her clothing was in shambles, and ashes blackening her dress and apron. Her hair was gray and mousy brown with ratty tangles. As she came closer and would have passed him to the other end of the pathway, he greeted her and asked her to please tell him which way was out of the forest and back to his castle. She only agreed to help him if he would meet his daughter and take her with him to the castle as his wife. He decided his options were few, and he was getting very hungry. So he followed her over the trail into the dusk. Very soon they came to a cottage with a rickety porch that needed painting, and he began to wonder if this woman was an outcast witch. There was something sly about her, and she moved with a disdainful swoosh, swoosh of her sooty garments. She had refused his offer to carry the bucket with, "I don't need anyone to help me, not even the likes of you." Everything about the cottage was dark and gloomy. Everything was off putting. Yet he went inside with the women, thinking, "What a feminist." Inside was dinner waiting on the table, set for three. It was as if they knew he was coming to dinner. There was a beautiful young woman dressed in a red, low busted dress with touches of black lace, wearing bangles and anklets. She was stirring something savory in a large cauldron hung over a crackling fire. He could barely take his eyes off her enchanting appearance and movements until their eyes met. Immediately he was struck with a dread of what he had agreed to do, to take her home to his castle as his wife. His wife? Oh no, what have I done? I'd have been better off to take my chances with the friendly beasts of the forest. So his thoughts went, but there was no way out. Conversation during dinner was slow and uncomfortable while he gathered his courage to fulfill his promise. He began to wonder how they would go now that darkness had certainly fallen. Soon, and with no offer of dessert, the mother told them they needed to be off. She came near and whispered in his ear that he would be hopelessly lost in the forest if he decided not to keep his promise. He nodded hesitantly, but immediately they found themselves, horse and new couple, at the drawbridge to his own castle. Night had fallen deep upon all things, so he called out to the watchman, who responded with a joyful, "Hail, thou honored king!" The king showed the lady to her own suite and called for flowers to be delivered to the room. He reassured her that the next morning he would order that all would be made ready for a beautiful wedding and coronation for them, and they would certainly be married before nightfall. Ladies in waiting brought warm milk and rich vanilla cakes for her bedtime snack. My ear is so small, this will stay in. Also was brought warm slippers and a sweet flowing nightgown. They put wrapped hot rocks inside the covers of her elegant bed, near where her feet would soon rest to keep her feet warm. The king departed without even a kiss goodnight. He slept badly. He no sooner got to sleep, after which seemed forever, than he woke with a start. His pipe was the only thing that would bring any comfort. Next day was filled with a flurry of activity, and as evening drew near, the couple were married with a flair to suit his bride. The new queen was crowned, and all the attending court bowed low to her. They soon exchanged looks with each other, some whispering that there was something odd about this young woman and her haughty demeanor. Her eyes blazed with greed and fervor that they could not explain. She had eyes of hazel that flashed green and brown by turns. Her mood was never light and contented. The king was little impressed with the character of his queen. To say the least, she might be the most lovely woman in the world, but he was not comfortable spending any time together with her. After a very short honeymoon, he began to spend time away. He made hurried plans to protect his children. He had seen the dark glances at them by the queen. He lost no time in placing them in a cottage deep in the woods on the opposite side of the castle from where he had faithfully met his bride and queen. He had taken counsel from the wisest of women in the court, one of great knowing. She prepared a spool or reel wound with jute. They unwound the twine as she led them deep in the forest, filled with dappled light. The white cottage was surrounded by trees, some of the fruit variety, flowers and shrubs of every kind common to the area. The porch was painted robin egg blue and white railing and porch swings with hanging baskets, and canaries sang sweet songs in their gold-gilded cages. Cats played on the porch, and a lazy dog lounged at the foot of one of the cooks, who was peeling potatoes for dinner. There were cows and goats and chickens and pigs in the barn. Gorgeous horses with long manes ate from the greenest grass near their stalls. There were staff for the kitchen who also kept a kitchen garden of herbs and vegetables. The youthful children would be well cared for, but find much to keep them happy in between his visits. Their rooms were comfortable, if not ornate, for a cottage. Father and king soon had to return to his castle, now darkened with the presence of the queen. He returned with gifts for his children frequently via the spool of jute, since no one could ever find the cottage without it. Queen was soon displeased with his many long hunting trips. She figured out that the staff was unconcerned, as if they knew why he was gone so long. They acted as though this was quite normal, yet she suspected more. She offered great rewards to any staff who would come forward and chat with her and give her more information about his whereabouts. One greedy maid finally showed her the spool of jute. She was richly rewarded. The queen set about sewing cloaks, embroidering enchantments all through the garments for each child, including the daughter. When these were prepared, she set out on her walk into the woods. She thought it so odd, the difference in these woods. So much light filtered through the branches of the trees, and so many more wildflowers. She did not care, and these did not warm her heart, which was bitter with jealousy. The young ones came out to greet whomever was tramping through the forest, thinking her to be their own father. With a little awareness of her mood and plans, they got just close enough that she could throw the cloaks over each one. Suddenly, all 6 men turned into black swans, graceful but nonetheless shocked. They trumpeted loudly, and their sister looked out of the window just in time to see them fly off in the sky, their dark bodies in stark contrast to the blue sky. She saw them with horror. She saw with horror that the queen was clapping her hands for joy. The queen forgot about the daughter and beat a hasty retreat. She was using her father's spool to wind up the jute as she found her way back home by the same magic that brought her. If only the spool's magic had taken her away deep into her own familiar, darkening woods. This was not to be, and the story gets darker and darker. Reader, beware that parts of this are not suitable for children. And because whatever happened at the end of the story is very cruel indeed. Part of history is woven into the words of these pages. Thank you for listening. Again, like and share, subscribe, and I'll be providing more a couple times a week. I post. Thank you.